Hey y'all, it's me, CheesyPaninie. If you're a big fan of Pokemon and follow a couple of pixel artists on Twitter, there's a chance that you've heard of Kanto Redrawn. I was exposed to a lot of pixel artists that I now follow from this hashtag, and it made me want to try doing something like that, but I didn't know what the rules were, who was organizing the event, and it was really not the best time for me to take on such a big project at the time. Months passed by and I came across a post asking for pixel artists to join in for hashtag Kanto Redrawn. At the time, I stopped taking on art commissions and started looking for a steadier source of income, so I thought that this would be the best project to take on to practice my pixel art while I applied for jobs. I joined their Discord and Trello and looked through the maps that were still available. There were actually a lot of maps that haven't been done yet and I had a lot of options. But the one that caught my eye the most was the second floor of Cerulean Cave. It was, in my opinion, the most boring looking map in the whole selection, and that excited me. It felt like a challenge to make it interesting, but at the same time, it didn't have too many things going on in it, and I thought that meant it would be easier to make. I actually thought that I would be able to complete it in less than a month. Oh boy, was I wrong. It took 4 months and 21 days, and I'm going to tell you why. But before that, let me give you a rundown on the 4 main rules they laid out for Kanto Redrawn. Rule number 1, keep the map at the same scale as the original. This is because they plan to stitch these maps together when they're all done and display it like a gallery in their website, Redrawn. The only times that they allow you to reasonably expand the size a bit is if no other maps are close enough to be affected. Rule number 2, stick to the palette provided in the Trello info. This is because everyone who will be participating has their own unique pixel art style, and having a set palette would make the maps appear more cohesive. They have specific palettes for overworld maps and for caves or nighttime maps. Rule number 3, light source is from the southwest. Not quite sure why they chose that particular direction, but it also adds to the cohesiveness of the maps. Rule number 4, try to stick to Pokemon from the Kanto region. Which also makes sense, but they do allow adding exotic Pokemon from later generations, but it shouldn't dominate the whole map. Other than that, they encourage people to just go crazy with their creativity and make the map feel alive by adding trainers, Pokemon, and everything else that fits the theme. On the first day that I started working on the map, I wasn't completely sure how to go about it, but at the time I was playing Diablo 2 and got a little bit inspired by the caves in that game. I also wanted to stick to just having exactly 3 colors all throughout because that's just how many colors there were in the original map. To make my map as close to the form of the original as possible, I decided to paint over it and edit it as I go. I experimented with details and how I should draw certain parts of the map. I wanted it to have that really rough and rugged look that Diablo 2 had, and I wanted it to feel organic, so I decided not to use a tile set. I wanted every piece of rock, cliff, hole, and path to feel as distinct from each other as possible. I found it easier to start with 2 colors first and then just form the basic shapes. But I didn't want to do the whole thing at once because I was still unsure of how to implement the 3rd color, and I didn't want to risk making a mistake. So I decided to focus on a small part of the map to figure out what looks the best and what's the best workflow for it. Should I put colors in multiple layers? Should I do light colors first before doing dark ones? Should I do them the opposite way? Should I add dithering or not? And all of that stuff. The order of how you do them matters a lot because it contributes to the kind of look you're going for. In this case, it took me several hours to find something I liked because I was so happy at how it already looked in brown and black, so when the light purple color had to be implemented, it felt very dissonant. It felt like it wasn't meshing well enough and I wasn't sure how to fix it. Since they didn't enforce deadlines at the time, I felt comfortable enough to just leave the map unfinished for a while as I went about and did other things. It took almost a month before I got back to working on it because That's just how life is sometimes. You get a little sidetracked and sometimes something comes up and hobby projects have to unfortunately take a step back. The thing about any creative endeavor is once you take a step back from it for some time, you get to see it again with fresh eyes and perspective. So by the time I came back to it and started working on it again, I decided to add a fourth color, which was even lighter than the purple. Once I did that, everything felt a lot more balanced somehow. I didn't plan to use it extensively. I just wanted to be able to highlight the manholes. Does it make sense for those holes to be illuminated in real life? Probably not. But I learned in some game design videos that putting some light in certain areas would direct the players to them, and it made sense in this situation. It's not actually going to be used in a real game, but at the time, I really thought it was going to be. This was because I saw someone on Twitter use Pokemon maps drawn by fans and replace the maps inside the game, and thought this was the same project. It was not. In fact, I don't even remember who it was who did that. And with the number of people I follow on Twitter, I'm not even sure how I'll find it again. If you guys know the project that I'm talking about, could you please let me know down in the comments below? I would really like to see it again. Okay, so I realized that the project that do use custom maps is based on Kanto Redrawn maps, and we were supposed to send both blank maps and non-blank maps for it. But until now, I still don't know who is making the game version. So yeah, please still let me know down in the comments below. I continued to add more details and extended the highlights to the right side, making the elevations and grooves a lot more prominent by using scattered dithering along the path with lower ground. I also softened the edges of the rocks to make them feel more blended into the ground instead of looking like it was just put on top of it. 2 days later, I continued the map once more and started it off by making rough marks on the path as a guide for which parts would be prominently lit up and which parts would have scattered dithering. Once I was happy with that, I started putting more detail around the second manhole, which was close to the first. I also started putting details on the rocks surrounding the path. In order to put a clear separation between these rocks and the walkable pathway, I decided to keep them darker than everything else, using black pixel dithering to give it its form. However, if I only used 2 colors for it, it would feel too disconnected from the rest of the map, so I added some scattered highlights here and there, which are usually just a few pixels. It may not seem like much, but once you zoom out, it does make a visible difference and lights it up in just the right amount that I wanted. To keep that organic feeling, I made the position of the ladder and the shape of the hole different from the first, while still applying the same lighting concept that I used on the first to tie them together. Now you'd think that because I basically covered the most important parts of the map, the path, the rocks, and the manholes, I literally just had to replicate the whole process for the rest of it. That's it. It's done. Simple. That's what I thought too. I thought it would be fast and easy once I've gotten the basics done, but what I learned from making a large artwork like this that I needed to work on over the course of several months, that there is a tendency to change your technique and approach every single time that you pick it up. This is especially true for this project because I've never done anything like this before, and I haven't formed a system or a habit that would make it easier for me to finish the project. June 30, I laid down the highlight with a large, solid brush and a dithering brush at the inner edge, and proceeded to do a few smaller details. July 4, I went straight to doing tiny details for each part of that path. It's also on this day that I had the wild idea of making one path to look like stairs. July 5, I still focused on doing tiny bits at a time and gave a more prominent highlight to the rocks at the lower left side of the map. I would have kept going, but because I've been doing this for 2 days straight, I got tired of its tediousness at some point. It makes a lot of sense to take a break from the piece for now and just continue it on a later date to avoid burnout, but I had a lot of free time and I wanted to invest that time into my project. It's a dilemma I frequently encounter when I work on things, so I did the alternative and took a break on that section and jumped off to another side of the map. You might be thinking, how is this any different from what I've been doing? How does this help for avoiding burnout? You see, while I'm drawing the rocks and cliffs with black and brown, I'm using larger brushes and bigger, less specific strokes. I'm only working with 2 colors and I don't have to think too much about refining the details and balancing everything. That's also why it took me less time to cover a large area. After that, I took more than a week off from the project and continued it on July 14, starting things off by doing little details, then switching to bigger brushes once I got tired of that. After that, I jumped to highlighting the edges of the bottom cliffs and finishing off the 3rd manhole. I changed the angle of the ladder the next day and defined the path and cliffs at the end of the map. By July 16, as I'm writing the script for this video, I realized I've formed a reliable work pattern. I start my drawing session by doing the harder bits that require me to use a lot of my concentration, such as refining the small details, then moving on to doing the easier bits where I use large brushes with less focus on details. This is largely why I decided to make videos like this where I try to explain my process and mindset while showing a time-lapse of it. I never would have noticed that in any other situation because I usually turn off my brain when I draw. I would have music or a video playing in the background while I just let my hand do things. That sounds weird. Draw things. I did the same approach on July 20 and July 21, though I do sometimes tend to go back to the difficult bits too when I get bored of the easier bits. Around July 22, I started to slow down, and I think I've probably gotten a little tired of the project because the next time I came back to the project was October 6, almost 2 months after the last session. So what happened here? Why did I stop? Well, you see, this was the month that I got hired to write game guides. It was a continuous job, and since writing was not something I ever did professionally before, I went through a really major adjustment. I stopped making YouTube videos and drawing. A lot of things were on pause. It was stressful, but I needed to do what I needed to do to pay the bills. I'm still doing game guides to this day, but I'm at the point where I know what to do to balance things now. However, because I've been away from the project for a long time, my interest in it faded and I kept procrastinating on it. Truthfully, I probably would not have picked it up again if the project organizers did not enforce a deadline. Around September, they announced that the final deadline for all of the maps would be on October 15. There really isn't any major consequence for me not finishing the map. They were just going to assign it to someone else. But the idea that something I worked on would not be used at all was enough to get me off my lazy bum and start working on it again. However, when I opened the file and continued the map, I immediately stopped drawing after 8 minutes. I remember thinking to myself how amazing the other submissions are because even though I haven't been working on the map, I still went on Kanto Redrawn's Discord and looked at what other people were doing. I started to feel out of place because my version felt a little too dull compared to the fancy, colorful portrayals of the other artists. Looking back at it now, it was a very toxic mindset because the whole point of this collaboration was to showcase each other's unique styles. It wasn't about being better or being just as good as the others. It was about expressing yourself, and by thinking that my stuff isn't good enough is almost as if I'm telling myself there's only one way to express yourself and the way I'm doing it is wrong. I think the only way that the art I made for Kanto Redrawn would be wrong is if I went against the rules or if I intentionally drew something offensive, and I didn't do any of that. So I basically demotivated myself with all these unnecessary thoughts when I should have been having fun with the project instead. On the last day of submissions, I tried again. I actually almost didn't because I was tired after a busy day and my motivation was still shot at the time. But I really wanted my map to be a part of that project. I did as much work as I could, and I was surprised to see how quickly I was able to finish the rest of the map. It only took me about 2 hours, but it still looked consistent with the rest of the map, which I was really happy about. And so I submitted the map and went to bed. However, it didn't end there. I spent the next few days thinking about how much I wished I added characters and Pokemon in there, because it was around this time that I realized they were now making a playable map. It was just going to be viewable on a website, which is amazing. But I made it blank on purpose because I thought it had to be. That explains why everyone's been putting people and Pokemon in there. I thought they had it like in a different layer and they were just gonna remove it when they put it in the game or something like that. I don't know. I should have been asking questions and I should have been looking at the actual website. Yeah, that was a fail, a grand fail on my part. So I messaged one of the organizers and asked if I could edit my map one last time just so I could put a couple of characters and Pokemon, and they allowed it. I could have made my own version of the character sprites, but the original ones just looked so iconic that I didn't want to change them. So I copy-pasted them, edited them a little bit, and placed them by the center of the map. As for the Pokemon, I wanted them to blend in with the map, so I used the same colors as the background. I drew an Onix that had their body partially hidden under the path, a Geodude just chilling in the corner, a Graveler that was raising his hand up, an Electrode that was taking a nap, and a Parasect just doing its thing right there. I probably could have drawn more Pokemon, but I was already happy with everything I added, so I submitted it to the Discord for the last time. It was an interesting experience, and I'm definitely up to do more stuff like this. I've actually signed up for another redraw already on a different project. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it interesting. I know this isn't the type of video my channel has been known for, and it's a whole different direction, but I'm grateful that you gave it a chance and made it all the way here. I plan to do more videos like this alongside my journey of getting better at pixel art and learning other art mediums and techniques, so if you're interested in that kind of content, be sure to leave a like, comment what you think, and subscribe for more. But for now, I'm just gonna go do my thing, and you guys do your thing, and I'll see you guys later. Take it easy, stay cheesy.